Hey everybody, this is Robert from Black Belt Gaming. I hope you're doing well. I've got some more Mansions of Madness on the way if you're following that series. Right now, I wanted to give you an update on the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game I'm playing in online using Fantasy Grounds. We're playing through the Curse of Strahd, and I sort of carried you through the adventure so far that got me from first level to second level. Well, I thought I'd do another update before things got too far along and I couldn't remember anymore. I'm already getting a little fuzzy because the weeks have blended in together. But let me see if I can pick up where we left off. If you recall, I'm playing a cleric, and I had chosen the life domain. So I worship a god of healing. And along in the party is a rogue, and a fighter who likes to use scimitars, and then we have a sorcerer who is pretty good at hurling different fire spells and lightning spells, but doesn't have the greatest strength. So that kind of becomes important later. We continue to explore this haunted mansion, and if you haven't watched my first part about this Dungeons and Dragons game I'm in, this won't make much sense. But if you could, maybe check that one out, and you'll find out how we got here. But we're in this haunted house, and we're trying to locate a baby and help out some children with some monster that's in their basement. Well, we found out the baby is dead. We fought the ghost of the nanny. The whole house is haunted. Things are coming alive and attacking us. I think I told you my character was nearly killed twice already. Thankfully, our dungeon master is using a set of house rules for injury rolls, and instead of just dying on the spot, you end up with other kind of effects. So actually, my cleric is limping around right now, not capable of going at his normal speed due to a wound to his leg. Well, as best I can recall, things are getting a little fuzzy, unfortunately. We ended up exploring up towards the top of the mansion, and we come across a very strange room. It may have been chained shut, I can't recall, but there was sort of this presence in there. And we explored into the room, and as we've been exploring the mansion, we've been finding out the people who live there must be involved in some sort of cult or something. We explore the room, and two of the characters, I believe it was the fighter and the rogue, both become possessed by the spirits of the children that we met outside. So these children are dead, and their ghosts kind of tricked us into going into this house. And pretty soon, as far as I can remember, we ended up taking some sort of secret passage down from the top level of the mansion all the way down to the ground level, down into the basement. And we started to explore these narrow hallways down there. There seemed to be some different places where people were going to be buried. We heard some terrible chanting, some sort of creepy group chanting off in the distance. It was echoing through the halls. It was very dark down there. We continued to explore. This went from one session to another, as I recall. And in one game, we had half of our party was absent. So we had me and the sorcerer, but our rogue and fighter were gone for that session. So the dungeon master allowed us to play 2 copies of our characters so that we would have a party of 4. So we kind of had these doppelgangers with us, just exact copies of our character. We just needed to change the names to give us a better chance of surviving through the game that night. So as we went along, we came into a room with a statue. And it's a statue of Strahd, this vampire lord with a wolf beside him, I think, and he's holding some sort of orb in his hand on the statue. So my cleric, not very wisely, I must say, went up to investigate this and touched the orb. I think it fell to the ground, and I can't remember if it broke open or not, but soon we were surrounded by undead ghost creatures like shadows or shades. I'm not sure what they were, but we were in big trouble. We started a battle with these things, and my cleric was trying to use sacred flame, and the sorcerer was throwing off different spells. I think they had some sort of resistance to some of the sorcerer's magic. We were in trouble. In fact, one of the sorcerers, not his main character, but his doppelganger character, actually got killed in this fight. And my other copy of my character was going down. The main sorcerer started to use his lightning bolt spells, which, in sticking with the sort of theme of my character being afraid of lightning and thunderstorms, he was freaking out. I voluntarily slapped myself with the fear condition and backed away from the battle and just hurled spells from a distance and was praying for it to end. Finally, it may have been my main character ended up channeling divinity, and this voice was speaking to me, and it was kind of intercepting my prayers to my God. And it was saying, worship me, I'm here. And it was really strange. I didn't know what was going on. But when I channeled divinity, and it was a turn undead, basically, he said that this intercepting presence kind of funneled through me, and my shield glowed very brightly, and this bright light came out, and the undead scattered in all directions. So it had a good effect. We were able to finish off the remaining one or two that stayed. We survived that night. I think we met again for another session. The other party members were back. We continued to explore. And eventually we found, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but eventually we found this chamber where evidently the family that lived here had been making sacrifices. And let me stop here for a moment. Sorry about that. I was about to run out of time on this video. This chamber where this family was making sacrifices, and evidently the children, that's why the ghosts are in the house. The children were sacrificed to this something. There was an altar there surrounded by water, and there were these kind of ghostly figures all chanting. And let's see, I think the chanting stopped when we entered the room, but as soon as my cleric went first, stepped up onto the steps of this raised platform, the chanting started again, and they started to demand a sacrifice. I do remember our fighter was absent that night, because as soon as they started to demand a sacrifice or we would all die, we all kind of said we were looking over at the fighter because, he's kind of there with us in the game, but his player wasn't there that night, so we were going to sacrifice him while he was absent. But we didn't do that. Instead, we backed away and tried to get out of here, but they called forth some sort of creature called the Destroyer or something, and this shambling mound. And I'll probably have to talk about the shambling mound in my AD&D first edition series, because I remember fighting one of those years and years and years ago. Well, it's a little different in 5th edition. This creature showed up. We had this horrible battle with him, and he actually swallowed the sorcerer whole. and was chewing on him. And the sorcerer's strength is very low, so he kept failing all these checks. We were already exhausted, so that means we were making all of our rolls at disadvantage. And I remember the sorcerer was about to be completely dead. Even though we were still doing these injury rolls and all that, he kept needing to roll again and again every time he got to 0 hit points. And my cleric was trying to heal him. And I knew that the healing spell I was working with was a touch spell. And so the only thing that I could touch on the sorcerer was his foot, which was sticking out of this shambling mound's mouth. So my cleric had to run up and grab the sorcerer by the ankle and kind of tug on it and cast healing spells on him. And while this shambling mound was munching on him, it was actually quite funny at the time. But we just couldn't seem to hurt this thing. Everything we were throwing at it was just doing like 1 point of damage, 1 point of damage. It had like resistances to everything we were doing, or we just weren't doing enough damage to it. So the rogue wisely decided to try to make an escape, and we raised this set of bars, this portcullis, I think, and we were able to race out of there and get out of there alive and slam it shut. And we ended up escaping the mansion alive. Not before we had a little difficulty with some interesting traps and other things that spawned because we didn't make the sacrifice in the basement. As we were trying to make our way out of the mansion, these blades were swinging and dropping down from all the different doorways. And actually, one of the characters got seriously sliced by one of these. And my cleric got swarmed by rats. I think I was trying to break a hole in the wall. And instead of making an opening, I smashed a hole in the wall to try to avoid these blades right in the doorways. Rats just poured out of here and covered my cleric. And the sorcerer once again fired up his lightning spells, his witch bolt, I think it's called. That totally freaked my cleric out again, who's terrified of lightning of any kind. He tries to flee the room with rats all over him and lightning crackling all around him, and he jumps through one of these scythe blades, these horrible things, and ends up getting cut pretty badly, but he makes it through to the other side. And then the other characters start to jump through themselves, and somebody made a save and rolled a natural 20, and the dungeon master said that the trap ended up being disabled, and so whoever hadn't come through yet was able to just walk on through and not suffer an injury. But we continued to deal with some poison gas and other things, but we made it out. We made it out alive, badly wounded, exhausted, looking for somewhere to go just to get some rest. And so we kind of looked like walking death down the road. We ended up going into a tavern, I think, trying to find some place to rest. And an interesting thing happened. I think it was back at the mansion when we tried to rest somewhere in the mansion. I had a dream about these two different gods arguing with each other, these two figures, one light-haired, one dark-haired, one male, one female. And it actually ended up being sort of a religious battle. These two gods were wanting me to worship them. One was the sun and one was the moon. One was the morning lord and one was, I don't know, the lady of the night or something. And anyway, strangest thing, my character ended up, through discussions and decisions, ended up changing his domain. It was very odd. I've never had that come up before. changed his domain from the life domain to the light domain. So I got all kinds of different spells now, and this morning lord wants me to fight the undead and hurl as many fiery spells at the undead as I can. And so that was an interesting change. So now my cleric is sort of conflicted. He was very loyal to his previous god, and now he's had to switch. He can't seem to connect with his old god in this new realm. And then there's this Morning Lord who's begging him to take up his cause and spread his name, because evidently the people in the area have lost faith in him. So there's a whole interesting religious twist there that we role played. And so as we went to the tavern, the people were very unfriendly there. We ended up not being very welcome there, so we left and ended up meeting the brother of Irina, who's the woman we were there to look for and try to save, according to the letter in the first part of the adventure. So we ended up going to their mansion. And I think that's where I'll stop here, because we've had some interesting things happen since then, but I'll save that for a later video. Anyway, this is just for anybody interested in what's going on. It's been a lot of fun, and thanks for listening, everybody. I'll do another one of these later.